Hello and welcome back to Motherhood's Unexpected Path. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the story of how I found out that my son Asher was going to have a rare chromosome abnormality. So when I was 13 weeks pregnant, I was offered a test called a nuchal translucency test, where for me, as a first-time mom, I thought, oh great, an extra chance to see my child. Because typically with pregnancies, you usually get an 8-week ultrasound to confirm the pregnancy and a 20-week anatomy scan. And that's the only chances you get. I think I had tuned out the doctor when she said that this was a test for soft markers for genetic conditions. And I was just excited to see my baby on that ultrasound machine one more time. So I went in when I was 13 weeks pregnant to get that nuchal translucency scan done. My husband Matthew was with me, and we went into the room and the ultrasound tech was taking her measurements, and I was oblivious. I was just looking in awe at that ultrasound machine and just seeing my child, just so excited with him being our first child, just that awe that you're in, that you have a little life inside of you, and just imagining all the things that you're going to do as they grow up and all the things they're going to learn. So what my husband told me later was he noticed that the ultrasound tech kept on looking puzzled and taking the same measurement multiple times. Come to find out, the measurement that they take is a measurement of the nuchal fold, and the measurement that Asher was giving was a lot larger than what they're comfortable with seeing. So the ultrasound tech cheerfully said, okay, well, I'm going to show your results to the doctor and she'll be in momentarily to speak with you. And later my OBGYN came into the office to talk to us. Well, she told us that the measurement that Asher had was larger than what they're comfortable with seeing. And when they see a measurement that large, it is very possible that the child will have a genetic condition. And it's very possible that our child could have Down syndrome. That's when everything changed. She offered us to have another test done, which was the panorama test, where they take a vial of your blood and they run tests on it to see what your risk factor is for having a child with trisomy 13 Pitot syndrome, trisomy 21 Down syndrome, and trisomy 18 Edwards syndrome. So that day I got a vial of my blood taken and I anxiously awaited to see what the results would say. About 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from the doctor's office. My doctor was actually on vacation, and another doctor had actually called me at 7 o'clock in the evening to discuss my results with me. And she told me that the good news was we had the lowest possible risk factor for Pitot syndrome. We also had the lowest risk factor for Down syndrome. But the test could not give us a risk factor for Edwards syndrome. So at that point, the doctor said, depending on what you want to do right now, dictates our next move. You can stop all testing and proceed with your pregnancy. You can terminate your pregnancy. You can go on and get further testing, which would be an amniocentesis. And at that point, we would refer you to OSU to get amniocentesis done with their maternal medicine specialists. So at that point, I wanted to know as much as I could know. I am one that I need to make an informed decision. So we went down to OSU, to the maternal fetal medicine specialists, and they scanned me at 15 and a half weeks pregnant to see if my membranes had fused. Because if your membranes aren't fused, it's very likely that the needle's going to continue bouncing back from that second layer, and that also increases your risk of having a miscarriage. So when they did my scan, my membranes hadn't fused yet, but the sweet ultrasound tech she had asked us if we wanted to know what we were having. I'm a planner, so I wanted to know what we were going to have, especially so that way I could have our name picked out. So when she started doing the scan, she couldn't get a shot to see if our little one was a boy or a girl. And then all of a sudden his legs popped open and she's like, "It's a boy." And it was an awesome moment because we already had a boy name picked. We knew we were going to have our Asher Ernest. And so at that point, it just completed the picture for us, and we were ready to accept whatever was going to come our way. We just wanted to know as much as possible. So after the ultrasound tech left the room, they had to have the maternal fetal medicine specialist come in and talk to us. And she was telling us about she was going to have us do our ultrasound and our amniocentesis in a couple of weeks because she wanted time for my membranes to fuse. So that way the procedure was safer for the baby. So she said, though, that one thing she needed to know was based on the results of the test, what we were going to do. I was asked yet again, "Are you terminating your pregnancy?" That is a really hard question to be asked. And one of the biggest things that stuck with me was when I was a little girl at my church, there was a family that had a daughter with Down syndrome, and she was the sweetest thing. And one day, being the curious child I was, I had asked the father of that child, and I had asked him, if you would have known ahead of time that your daughter was going to be how she is, would you have changed anything? And he said no. He said, raising her and being around her teaches you to look at life through different eyes. And that's one thing we want to change for the world. Now, having Asher, I know exactly what he meant that day. And when the doctor was asking me that question about terminating my pregnancy, his words came back into my head, and it made me hopeful for the future and for my child's future. So we decided to continue with the pregnancy and get as many answers as we could before he was here. So when I was 18 weeks pregnant, I had my amniocentesis done, and the results came back that Asher has a rare chromosome abnormality called 18p-q+. What that means is he has a partial deletion on the top of his 1/18th chromosome. And then on the bottom of that same chromosome, he has a duplication that is added on to the bottom of that chromosome. So he has one copy of the genes that are at the top of his healthy 18th chromosome, and then he has 3 copies of some of the genes at the bottom of his 18th chromosome. He has the copy on the bottom of the healthy chromosome, and he has 2 copies on the bottom of the affected chromosome. One hard thing about trisomy 18 is that doctors in their textbooks in medical school are taught that children with trisomy 18 die. They all die. You're better off terminating your pregnancy because your child's going to have no quality of life. Quality of life is an interesting medical phrase that's used a lot. I have met very many children affected by a chromosome 18 abnormality since we've had Asher, and I can tell you that they have wonderful quality of life. So when you are faced, maybe you are pregnant and your child has a chromosome issue and you're thinking about what you're going to do, research and look for parent and just affected advocate groups. I know for my son's condition, There's the Chromosome 18 Registry and Research Society, and it's full of wonderful individuals. They're so helpful because they know that when they were in your shoes, they wish they had someone there. And they are always willing to supply any information they can, because it truly takes a giant family to raise a child. And especially when you're facing some difficulties that you face with raising a child with special needs. So some of the things that I was told during my pregnancy was to be ready, because it's possible you could have a miscarriage. It's possible your child will be a stillborn, and it is possible that your child could die soon after birth. I had numerous anatomy scans done for the remainder of my pregnancy. I had an ultrasound every single month, and they looked at everything. They looked at his brain, his heart, his growth, to just make sure that we were prepared for anything that might arise. We also had to have non-stress tests done twice a week from 30 weeks until 39 weeks when I had Asher. And they were just constantly monitoring him. So I think that's one thing that gave me peace of mind and hope that everything would be okay, because we were keeping an eye on all of his organs and his growth to make sure he was still growing, that he was getting enough nutrients. So that made the possibility of some of the things that they were telling me was he could be a miscarriage, he could be a stillborn, or he could die soon after he was born. Those made those scary things less likely in my mind. I don't know if it made it less likely for my doctors, but for me, it helped. Just seeing him every month and knowing that he was growing was really helpful for me. Another thing that I kind of worried about was I was worried how strong he would be as he grew up. I was worried that if he was higher functioning, would he act normal enough or be normal enough that kids wouldn't automatically pick on him? And if he didn't look normal or didn't act like a typical child, would he be a strong enough of a person to overcome some of the obstacles that could pose for him? Would he know to reach out to get help if someone was bullying him? Or would he be able to stand up to a bully? That was one of my biggest fears, and I think one of the biggest doubts I've had in myself as a parent. But already he just lights up a room, and I don't think that he's going to have a problem. He'll be starting preschool in January because he will be 3. He's almost 2 years and 10 months old now. So I will be interested to see what happens. But that was one of my biggest fears when I was pregnant. And I have heard it from other mothers that was a concern that they might have. And my advice to you is that if you are worried about that, just be confident enough in yourself to know that you can love and support your child enough that they can get through any obstacle that they're faced with. Ultimately, if you are there for them or someone is there for them, they will be okay. They're stronger than you think they are. There is hope out there that things aren't as bad as they seem. So just get as much information as you can. I am always willing to be there to be there to give you any information I might have, or I might know someone who might have information on something you're struggling with, and I can see if they would be willing to speak with you. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment below, and I'll see you at my next video. Bye.